Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Hooked on Sports here on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and wherever you get your podcasting streaming services. My name is John Flynn, and thank you so very much for listening to the episode, the podcast today. It is Wednesday, February the 4th, 2026. And we are just 4 days away from Super Bowl Sunday, and I'm already set to break down the Super Bowl for you later this week when I lock in my Super Bowl pick coming up on Friday, which is when I'm planning to publish it. So we have things to discuss on today's podcast. I'm going to give you my grades for all of the NFL head coaching hires because all 10 head coaching vacancies from this past year have been filled. So I will get into that, but we're gonna start with some NBA today because the trade deadline is tomorrow. There are a lot of hot button in, information that's been going around. We had some big trades, so that transpired during this especially yesterday because there was quite an active day on the trade market. So I want to start with the big one of them all is that the Los Angeles Clippers traded future Hall of Fame shooting guard James Harden to the Cleveland Cavaliers in a big shakeup of the core with the Clippers, while the Cavs were sending back 26-year-old stud guard Darius Garland and a second round pick to complete the reported trade. So this feels kind of problematic on some different levels because and I think the number one cause of this trade for the Cavs has been their underachievement the last couple of seasons. And look, so the Cavs were simply superb last year during the regular season, but they lost in round two to Tyrese Halliburton, Rick Carlisle, and the Indiana Pacers last year, and that was certainly not an acceptable result for the team that finished with the best record in the Eastern Conference. And there needed to be some part of a shakeup, but I genuinely don't have any idea on why the Cavs chose James Harden as the answer to complement Donovan Mitchell. So on the backcourt because if you look at the places where James Harden was traded from, like Houston, Brooklyn, the Philadelphia 76ers, the Clippers, and all of those marriages with those teams haven't ended particularly well. So for the Cavs to say here's an aging James Harden who has genuinely was generally underperformed in postseason expectations. I mean, if you look at Game 7 against the Warriors in 2018 as the ultimate example, the Rockets had a prime opportunity to win a championship, but they couldn't hit anything in that Game 7. That's the prime example. There are others too, but some but yeah, but that's really the big one. And then the inability to win with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving in Brooklyn as an example, and then with Philly that turned out to be a flop, and then the pairing up with Paul George in LA that did not turn out the way the Clippers had hoped as well. So, and I think Cleveland's gonna get is gonna get a taste of the medicine that all these teams drank when they traded for Harden. So So this makes I don't understand why this is now. So does this mean the Cavs are going to improve their position for the playoffs? I mean, yeah, you definitely have to take that bet because the Cavs would be in a position to advance to round one in the playoffs if the season were to end today. They are 3.5 games ahead of the Heat to avoid Miami Heat to avoid the play-in, and they're only 2.5 back of the Knicks for the Knicks and the Celtics for the 2 seed in the East, which is kind of a big deal because for those 2 and 3 spots because then you can potentially avoid a round 2 matchup with Detroit if that were the case, and which would probably be which in theory should be an easier path to get to the conference finals. But Garland is a tremendous player, and I think he's going to help the Clippers and have some potential stability for other things that they're gonna try and want to accomplish as well. So I think that was a good trade for the Clippers, and I don't get this at all from the standpoint of the Cleveland Cavaliers. So that's the first part of that's the big trade that went down on Tuesday. So there were other trades that went down, and how about this? Between the Memphis Grizzlies and the Utah Jazz, two teams that are basically out of playoff contention. So redefining their futures. It was a trade that where the Memphis Grizzlies traded stud Jaren Jackson Jr. Along with 3 other players to the Jazz in exchange for a package that includes 3 first-round picks. The Utah's 18th overall pick from last year, Walter Clayton Jr., who, by the way, I think he is going to be a tremendous, an excellent point guard for whoever he winds up with along with 3 other current players on the Jazz too. So, look, I kind of view this as a win-win for both teams. I mean, the Grizzlies. So it became clear to the folks in Memphis that they couldn't compete with the core that they had. So they started a tear down in earnest um when they traded Desmond Bain to Orlando this past summer. They traded another big piece with Jaren Jackson Jr. yesterday to Utah, and now there's a likely possibility that John Morant is going to be an ex Memphis Grizzly by the time the trade deadline rolls around tomorrow afternoon. So I'll be looking at that from a Memphis perspective. And look, I think the Jazz are gonna be an interesting team going forward because they have a super. I think they're gonna have an excellent front court. They have three excellent big men with Jaren Jackson and Larry Markkinen. And they also are expected to bring back Walker Kessler when he is up for free agency this off season this summer, and he's expected to come back and be their big unit. They also have a really interesting point guard in Keontae George, who is 22 years old and is averaging 24 points, 4 rebounds, and 7 assists in a game this year. And then they also have Ace Bailey, who was a superb stud at Rutgers last year, and after his slow start his rookie year, he is finally settling in with Utah. So I think the Jazz have an interesting team going forward. Obviously going to be a tall task for Utah to eventually be able to compete with OKC in the Western Conference with the talent they have and the depth they have and all those things per se. But we got that as well. We also had two trades involving the Chicago Bulls that went down yesterday. The Bulls traded center Nikola Vucevic to the Boston Celtics in exchange for Anthony Simmons and a swap of first uh, uh, and and future second round picks going back to both teams. And look, I think the most stunning thing so far this season in the NBA, you can argue Detroit's rise to the top of the East as a big story. You could look at San Antonio as well, but I think the fact that the Boston Celtics are tied for the second best record in the Eastern Conference without Jason Tatum this year, I think is a crazy proposition, crazy reality to have here. So I think all of those things being equal, now that Simmons with Simon's gone. This also might lead the Celtics to believe that Jason Tatum might have a good shot at coming back from the gruesome injury he suffered last year in the playoffs before this postseason begins, which would be an unbelievable boost for the Boston Celtics for all what it's worth. But Vucevic, I really like him. He's been a good player for a long time, and I like this deal a lot for the Boston Celtics. The Bulls kind of got an underwhelming return package for Vucevic, but they did have another trade earlier in the day yesterday, a three-team trade with Chicago with Detroit and Minnesota. The Bulls got Jaden Ivey, a young a young stellar a young point guard a guard who's been underused in Detroit as the main piece of the trade. Detroit. The Bulls also got Mike Conley in a trade in the trade for Minnesota, whereas Detroit got Kevin Herter and Dario Saric from Chicago and a first round protected swap in Minnesota to complete the trade. And I do like this a lot for both Chicago and Detroit. Minnesota is it's just a way to clear up some cap room if that they want to go after Giannis in a potential trade before the deadline tomorrow. And as for Detroit, I think they needed someone. This is a better this is a better construction of the roster going forward for Detroit because I think they need someone to take some pressure off Kate Cunningham and what he's been able to do, and they got Herter on a rental as well. So we'll see if the Pistons are able to bring him back. So we have all these acquisitions going on, but now the big fish could potentially come before the deadline tomorrow afternoon with Giannis and with um and with Morant. And as for Giannis, I think I think you have to look at a few teams that could potentially be in play. I think you look at Miami. I think you look at the Golden State Warriors. You look at the Portland Trailblazers, and the Blazers might play a big role in this because they have first round pick swaps with Milwaukee for 2028 and 2030 which was part of the return package that the Blazers got when they sent Damian Lillard to to Milwaukee in September of 2023. So, so now that Dame is back in Portland, could he potentially be able to recruit Giannis and bring him to the Pacific Northwest? We'll see how that's gonna be able to play out. But I really will be fascinated if Giannis's move to Golden State because I think that this would make sense on a lot of different levels for Golden State because they might want to move off the contracts of Jimmy Butler and Draymond Green as good as Draymond has been and as essential as he's been for the Warriors' successes over the last 15 years. Draymond has been a shell of himself, and Giannis would mark a massive upgrade over what he brings to the table. So I think you look at that for a team like Golden State. Now you're in an opportunity. I don't know if it's going to be this year, but potentially one more shot for Steph to win a championship before maybe his best chance next year but before Steph eventually retires. So that would be such a bold trade. Of course, the Warriors are going to have to give up a lot because Giannis has 2 years left on his current contract. So you have to look at that. Miami would be a fascinating place as well. The Knicks were I think they've been hot and heavy on Giannis, but it doesn't sound like they're gonna wind up getting someone like Giannis without breaking up the current roster construction, which the Knicks which the Knicks organization really seems to like these days. So we'll see if the Knicks are proven right on that, then another potential a team that could be in the mix is the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Timberwolves have been in the conference finals each of the last 2 years in the West. They fell short there. And I think with Minnesota's roster and being so well coached and 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 all things being equal, I think Giannis to Minnesota. Could potentially be a potential scare for OKC if the two teams were to meet in the playoffs. Right now, Minnesota is a half a game ahead of the surprising Phoenix Suns for that for that last wild cards for that last spot into the first round of the playoffs. And we'll see if that turns out to be the case. Actually, at this time, it looks like Phoenix is going to beat Portland, so they'll be tied for the sixth seed in the Western Conference. So I think this is maybe a signal that they're going to try and maximize what they have with Ant-Man being the center of things. But then Minnesota will be back in the finals conversation if they get if they wind up getting Giannis in a trade, which I think would kind of be the most surprising of them all. But given what Giannis's comments on about Ant-Man the last couple of years, I could see why that could be the case where Giannis is going to want him are going to move just a little bit to the west to Minneapolis. Now, so we'll see how that transpires between now and the trade deadline tomorrow. So we have that. So well, all 10 head coaching vacancies have been filled in the NFL. So now it's time for this part of the podcast to reveal my grades for each of the 10 hires in the head coaching carousel for 2026. And I'm gonna do this in the order in which which their hires were announced or reported. So let's start with John Harbaugh because John Harbaugh to the New York Giants that received a great grade from A from me. So he got a great an A grade. So look. The Giants needed a serious cultural and organizational shift after a decade of futility and hopelessness as after Tom Coughlin was forced out. by the Giants, and choosing Jerry Reese over Coughlin, and that them not being able to do things to elsewhere, miss on some hires, and miss, and obviously the quarterbacks stuff as well. But John Harbaugh consistently wins you ball games, and a big upside into hiring Harbaugh was that he would bring in some stud coordinators. So we will see what transpires with Matt Nagy, and there are at best mixed reviews on the Giants hiring Matt Nagy as their offensive coordinator, and then Denard Wilson being the defensive coordinator for the Giants. So are good fits, but in terms of leadership, in terms of changing the course of the future for the Giants, this is an A grade for the Giants and hiring Harbaugh. So the Atlanta Falcons hiring Kevin Stefanski, that hire received a grade of an A minus for me. I mean, Kevin Stefanski is one of the better offensive minds in this league, and now, and compared to the situation in Cleveland, where like he never had a chance to win a championship, thanks to all the ownership meddling and the dysfunction in the organization, and possibly the worst quarterback situation in the NFL, something that he had no control over, no say over things. But yet in his 6 years in Cleveland, he won Coach of the Year twice, which is kind of a remarkable accomplishment for a coach. But now he's got Bijan Robinson. He's got real talent for the offense, and Tommy Reese taking over as the offensive coordinator. I think is a solid hire in and on itself. And now you have real adults in the room in Atlanta after what transpired with Fontenot and Rich McKay and Raheem Morris. Now you have Matt Ryan. Now you have Kevin Stefanski, and they also are bringing in Bears assistant general manager Ian Cunningham to be the general manager as well. So I think you have to look at the Atlanta Falcons with what they've done so far, improving defensively over the past year. I think the Falcons are real contenders in the NFC South, and they're contenders for real this time. I haven't bought into the Falcons the last few years, based upon the lack of talent there in key positions. But now I can say for real they're a contender in the NFC South. The Dolphins hiring Jeff Hafley received a grade of a C plus, and I kind of feel like I kind of feel like there's gonna be more. I think there should be more attention on what the new general manager John Eric Sullivan is going to bring to the table, and the Dolphins, and the only way for the Dolphins to go up from here is to build through the draft, similar to what Seattle did, similar to what Philly did. Now they're hoping so that that they can look at how shot the Dolphins roster is, and for them to be able to try and make something out of that. Now, I think Jeff Hafley is gonna boost the defense boost the defense some, because I think Jeff Hafley has been a decent to quality coordinator with Green Bay, and I think it made a lot of sense for the Packers to bring him into the first place. And I think Hafley bringing having head coaching experience at Boston College, albeit without the desired results from that gig, but I do think he should help turn the defense around. But with the quarterback situation there, I think that this feels like a C plus grade to me. Now, Robert Sala going to the Titans said that grade that hire received a grade of a C minus. And yeah, Sala has been a head coach before, and he said he's going to call the plays this time. But to me, this is far from an inspired hire. Sure. So he was able to bring in Brian Dable to be the offensive coordinator, and Brian Dable is a brilliant offensive mind, when you go back to his days coaching up Josh Allen, under his rookie contract in Buffalo, even his defenses, while in San Francisco, while they've been decent, they haven't been overwhelming. So per se, but I don't know if he can be the catalyst that can turn around this franchise in the NFC South, given that the sudden meteoric rise in Jacksonville, Houston fielding championship caliber defenses, and the Colts eventually going to have to solve their quarterback situation for the long term once and for all, right? So this receives a grade of a C minus for me for the Titans. The Ravens hiring Jesse Minter received a grade of an A to me, and Jesse Minter has a proven track record of success on the defensive side of the ball, and I think Baltimore. I think you kind of look at the defense as them being the big reason why the Ravens wound up starting the season 1-5 a year ago and wound up missing the playoffs. That could be that's also the reason why they started 0-2 in 2024, why they were way behind and eventually couldn't get those home playoff games on divisional or championship Sundays in 2024. So you have that, but Jesse Minter is a tough, buttoned-up coach who can maximize some talent, and someone to shake up the culture for a franchise that is with a lot of talent that had fallen just short in heartbreaking fashion over the last 2 years. I thought that was a great hire by the Ravens. He's young. I think he's going to have success, and I think he's going to have a grade that received a grade of an A for me as far as I'm concerned for the for the Baltimore Ravens. And it also should be noted that the Ravens also brought in Declan Doyle to be the offensive coordinator. He Doyle's now at the cycle of Ben Johnson, and his difficult schemes to learn and process. And to play and to defend against. So I think this should be a solid coaching staff, and I think he's gonna and to me he's got a grade that's an A grade for me as far as I'm concerned. And also the Anthony Weaver coming in to be the defensive coordinator is a huge plus in and on itself as well. So we'll be looking at that when things comes to shove. The Pittsburgh Steelers, hiring Mike McCarthy. Now, I am higher on this hire than most people. This grade received a grade of a B to me. And we and it feels that way for the Steelers fans because this is a completely different direction from the past to hiring young defensive-minded head coaches like Chuck Noll and Bill Cowher and Mike Tomlin. So Anthony Weaver could have fit that bill. Offensively, Nate Scheelhaas could have filled the role, but you kind of have to think that while the Steelers have been such a competent organization for so many years, I mean historically, and other organizations have been so incompetent. So which is a good thing for the Steelers because it keeps the fan base intact. It grows their fan base, but in times like this where the Steelers had other dysfunctional organizations like the Browns, the Raiders, and the Cardinals still looking for head coaches, and other the teams still hiring looking for guys to step in as offensive coordinators. I think Mike McCarthy seemed like the safe hire, and I think you couldn't go wrong with a safe hire really, and really needed someone that can continue the trend of winning you games, and that's what Mike McCarthy did in Green Bay, winning a Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers. And by the way, and could we get another year of Aaron Rodgers playing in the NFL? And now he's got Mike McCarthy as the head coach, as we'll see. Mike McCarthy won a lot of games in Dallas, which was something that his predecessor didn't do as often. But 3 years in a row, Mike McCarthy won 12 games for the Cowboys, which has to go noted at some point. So so you have to look at that as well. And also Mike McCarthy taking a year off from coaching in the NFL, I think could pay dividends for the Steelers in hindsight, but we'll see how that transpires there. The Buffalo Bills, hiring Joe Brady as their head coach, received a grade of a C plus to me. And sure, yeah, he won the press conference. Yeah, he looked energetic. He got the support of the players or on his staff, but I kind of feel like this is the reflection of the conclusions the Bills ownership drew following the 2025 season. One where the Bills lost in the divisional round and they couldn't make it to Championship Sunday in a year where neither Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes or Joe Burrow made the tournament in this season. The Bills choosing to side with Brandon Bean over Sean McDermott, which I did not agree with. I did not agree with at all. And reminder, Brandon Bean, since drafting Josh Allen in round one of the 2018 draft, he's had 56 draft picks since then, and he's only drafted two Pro Bowlers. James Cook and Dawson Knox. Nothing on the defense, and so, I mean they've had to make up for it in free agency, which kind of made an unpleasant salary cap situation at times for the Bills. But the successes of the Bills offense of the last just couple of years is why Brady got the job in Buffalo, and he got a good defensive coordinator in Jim Leonard as well. So I think that's why I think him being able to bring in Jim Leonard is why this hire did not receive a grade lower than a C plus to me. Now, Todd Monken was hired as the head coach of the Cleveland Browns in a shocker, definitely a shocker for the Giants, who were really hoping on bringing in Todd Monken to be Jackson Dart's offensive coordinator. But this grade received a C. Now, in isolation, I don't think Monken is a bad choice at all because you look at what he did in Baltimore the last 3 years when he coached them. Finally getting Lamar Jackson to discover a part of his game that had been missing under previous coordinators. But And then you also go back to what he did at Georgia when they went back to back, and Stetson Bennett was the quarterback for those teams. For so no, with that, but this grade really to me is a reflection of the process and the candidates, and like they made them write college essays. I mean, are you kidding me? And Jim Schwartz really wanted to be the Browns head coach. I think I because Jim Schwartz always felt like, alongside Stefanski, felt like the heart and soul of that coaching staff. And to me, he was their best candidate for the job situation. And with given the timing, what he did, he came in as won the assistant coach of the year in 2023. He was helped lead the Browns to being the number one defense in the NFL. Not to mention Myles Garrett broke the sack record this year. And his game has been taken to the next level under the guidance of Jim Schwartz. But now that but since he was passed up and the Browns thinking in an alternative bubble that he could come back and be the defensive coordinator, but he was passed over, and now he wants no part of the Browns because of it. And it also doesn't help Tom Monken there that he has an impossible quarterback situation to handle to there with Deshaun Watson being unable to move off his contract, and then Shador Sanders um being there. And hey, Shador Sanders made it to the Pro Bowl. I mean, good for him, but bad for the Pro Bowl. But nonetheless, it's a grade of C to me. It was a kind of a shocking hire for all intents and purposes there. We did have two hires over the weekend. We had Kubiak, the Seahawks offensive coordinator, is going to be the is expected to be the new head coach of Vegas Raiders, and that hire received a grade of an A minus to me. And look, I love when teams bring in a new head coach and a new quarterback in the same offseason. This is presuming that the Raiders will select Fernando Mendoza with the number one overall pick in the draft coming up this spring, in the same year, and a good amount of Super Bowl champions have done that. Although it hasn't been as much recently because I mean because you had because of the dominance of Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. Um, uh, as something to monitor there. I think the most recent team that had done that, bringing the head coach and the quarterback the same year and win a championship, I believe, was the Patriots. Ironically enough, when they won, because technically Brady came in, was drafted the same year Belichick became the head coach, back in 2000. But prior to that, Doug Peterson and Carson Wentz, and then eventually Nick Foles from Philadelphia. I mean, Carson Wentz and Nick Foles and Doug Peterson put them in the situation where with so early on that 2017 season. But hopefully, I think if you're a Raiders fan, this is going to be a potentially similar situation with Kubiak and presumably Mendoza. And Kubiak was the answer to the Seahawks schematic struggles that cost them a playoff spot in 2024. And now Clint Kubiak is as responsible for as others for this iteration of the Seahawks being 60 minutes away from a championship on Super Bowl Sunday. So I think he's going to be great in Vegas. It's gonna be fascinating to see what teams or what coaches would be able to come in with his staff, because they'll be behind because Kubiak is coordinating Seattle's offense on Super Bowl Sunday, against the Patriots. So with that being said, the grade, that's an A minus higher for me for the Raiders. And finally, the Arizona Cardinals made the last head coaching hire of the cycle when they hired Rams offensive coordinator Mike LaFleur to be their head coach. And look, the Cardinals are in some dire circumstances. They have a lousy quarterback situation, and they're in a division where three teams made the divisional round with San Francisco, Seattle, and the Rams. So under those circumstances, I think this is a solid hire for the Cardinals. You can't go wrong with going from the Sean McVay coaching tree. And I think he is someone who I think is learned things about himself as a coach slash coordinator during his time with the Jets, and I think he's going to be better away from the Jets for than the Cardinals. But yeah, I think he's someone that's going to help out this offense. I think he's someone that's going to that when the time comes to draft a quarterback, hopefully he's around for when the Cardinals are ready to make the decision to move on from Kyler Murray and bring in a new quarterback. I think he is the right guy given the dire straits that the Arizona Cardinals franchise is in, given that three other teams in the division, that they all won playoff games this year, and two of them have already won multiple playoff games. So 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 my official Super Bowl pick podcast is I believe is going to come out either this probably this Friday. I'll preview all the X's and O's of Super Bowl 60. We got the Seattle Seahawks and the New England Patriots. I think it's going to be a fun, entertaining ball game coming up on Super Bowl Sunday, and I'm looking forward for you guys to hear what my official pick is for Super Bowl 60. So until then, this is John Flynn saying so long, and I'll be back here on the podcast later this week. So take care, everybody. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Yeah, for those of you listening, there's also the video version on YouTube. And if you can follow my the podcast socials at Twitter and formerly X, formerly known as Twitter and Instagram, and also on the Facebook page as well. So until have a great rest of the have a great day, everybody. I will most likely talk to you Friday about the Super Bowl. So until then, take care, everybody, and so long, so long, everybody, and we'll meet again on Friday.